And good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the California Small Farm Conference. My name is Evan Wigg. I'm with Community Alliance with Family Farmers, and we are very excited to have you here for another workshop. This one is Collaborative Farmer Networks, accessing tools, supplies, and infrastructure. We've got an incredible panel here to dig into this meaty topic, and want to give a big shout out to them and everyone who's helped make this event possible. I encourage people to introduce themselves, share resources, and ask questions using the chat feature in the bottom of your screen there. And otherwise, enjoy the workshop, the rest of the conference, and I'll pass on the mic. Thank you very much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan, and everyone for joining us today. And welcome to the annual California Small Farm Conference and our workshop. Happy Monday. Thank you for attending our session. And I always like to take a moment to just thank all the farmers who are on today's session as well, who are out there building our soils, feeding our local communities, helping to protect our natural resources. Thank you for giving yourself this time at the conference to learn new skills, build new relationships, and join this collective effort. So just want to take a moment to thank you all today. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So just a review of our learning objectives for today's webinar. We're going to have time. So we have 3 panelists that we'll be highlighting, and we're going to have time for question and answers and a discussion period for the last half of today's session. We are in a webinar format, so that means you won't be able to see all the other attendees, but we still want to hear your voice in this discussion. So please feel free to add any chat questions, either in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and we'll be receiving those throughout the session to add in for the end of the discussion. We've really had a remarkable registration number for this session, so we do apologize that you guys all can't see each other, but this was the best way to facilitate such a high number of attendees, so we're really excited for that. So that's it on that. And just want to give a few remarks on what this session is all about. So accessing farm inputs, equipment, and resources at affordable price points for the small farms can be challenging, especially in particular regions across California. And one of the most common barriers for small farms to increase their implementation of ecological, regenerative, and sustainable farming is access to the right and often specialized equipment and inputs. So this is what this session is about, just to address some of those barriers. And just making a note that the program I work for, the Small Farm Technology at CAFF, we're always seeking out ways for farmers to gain better access to technology innovation and knowledge on what tools, what tech is going to work for them, maybe what's working at other farms. But what about the social innovations that are perhaps even more impactful for the small farm? We've all heard get big or get out, but instead of one farm getting big, what about a big network of small operators working together to scale their collective impact and get returns on a collective investment? So that's what today's all about. We are excited to address these barriers. We've organized this panel to highlight different strategies and policy opportunities to help further along the journey of collaborative farming. Examples include facilitating tool sharing programs, group purchasing, building informal farmer networks. And we know these aren't the only examples out there. So we encourage you to speak up, share your own experiences working with other operators, share ideas. This session is meant to spark imagination and inspiration for how small farmers can work together. So please bring your ideas. We're excited for this robust discussion during the Q&A portion. So to jump in and not hear as much from me, these are our 3 panelists that we'll be highlighting today. They're going to have a chance to introduce themselves in a few minutes, but really excited to have these 3 folks help guide us through some promising examples that are happening across California. And before we jump to them, I'd like to pass the mic over to my coworker, Jamie, who will be reviewing the policy landscape of collaborative farming in California and why policy is important for this specific topic and discussion. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Jamie.
Sweet. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. Jamie Fanous, so she, her pronouns. I am the policy director at CAFF. And I feel like Elizabeth summarized it so well of like, we've been hearing, we do fall listening sessions every year, and this issue and this topic comes up so much that it has become a core priority of ours from a policy perspective. And it is a fundamental priority that we bring in Sacramento frequently. So much so that we are running legislation on it. But I do want to name some, just to cover ultimately, the opportunities to access resources from the state and from the federal government in terms of equipment sharing or cooperative development or technical assistance around forming a cooperative are really few and far between. There are really only two programs right now that even remotely include resources for equipment sharing, and that is at the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And there's an urban agriculture program there, and there's a beginning farmer and farm worker training program there, both of which you can access a small portion of funds for equipment sharing really to start up your program. But obviously that's not nearly enough. And considering there's only two people in the state that can provide technical assistance to start a farm co-op, there's so much more that's needed to fund and expand and support you all to form co-ops or think about starting kind of one of the amazing programs and examples that we'll hear today. And so I'll just highlight, this is something we've heard so much that we worked on a bill last year to establish the cooperative farming and equipment sharing program at CDFA. The idea would be to provide technical assistance to farmers that are cooperative curious, like, is it the right model for you? And how are you getting the assistance to do so? And then offer funding to purchase that equipment or purchase those tools to start an equipment sharing program. Unfortunately, in 2023, the governor vetoed that bill for reasons we will not talk about today. But just earlier this month, Assemblymember Bennett out of Ventura County reintroduced that bill. And so both CAFF and our partners at CalCan are really excited to get back out there and get this signed by the governor and actually have resources available from the state to fund you all and support kind of equipment programs, because it's as Elizabeth mentioned, is a fundamental and core priority that we continue to hear from farmers, and we want to support and expand as much as we possibly can. So I'll drop in a link in the chat later on this session of if you want to sign on and support, because the more sign-ons we have, the better. But just naming that landscape and giving you all a perspective on it is, yeah, that's me. I'm done. I'll hand it back to you, Elizabeth.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie for setting. All right, now getting into the excitement, we're gonna hear from our panelists on why they're here and the examples that they have to share with us, why this is important to them and all that stuff. We're gonna get into that in this discussion too. But I'll go ahead and pass it off to Nelson first to hear from you, and then we'll bring it back to our next panelist.
All right, thanks Elizabeth and team. It's my pleasure to be in community and solidarity with everybody in the room. I am the founder of We Grow Farms, and we have two sites currently right now, one in West Sacramento and one on the outskirts of Sacramento. And we grow, totaling about 1 acre right now, and we do about 25 varieties of seasonal produce, and we use agroecological and regenerative practices. And to me, that means, really taking a perspective, looking at the land in relation to the land, and it's a living being, it's an ecosystem that we are a part of. And so we protect our pollinators, we're mindful of our water use and making sure that we're conserving water, we enhance soil health, and we really bring in the community members that live right there in the urban space to empower them with food access as well as work opportunities. And we supply our produce directly to the communities that we serve through our summer farm stand, as well as a community supported agriculture program that we distribute throughout Sacramento. And we also sell directly to an apartment complex and some other food distribution programs in the area. And I'm excited to share some of my experiences working in collectives and collaborative farming activities. One was called Farmers of Color Collective, and we were a group of urban farmers in Sacramento, and it was more informal. And we, came together to share labor and skills and food. Of course, if you're growing food, you gotta, have a potluck and, enjoy the fruits of your labor at the same time. So there's that experience on the informal level. And then I'm also the co-founder of the Ujamaa Farmer Collective, which is more values-based and more mission-driven. And we're set up more formally as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And we are building cooperative elements within that because the nonprofit has its own kind of structures. So I can get into that a little bit later. But just briefly discussing that, we are committed to our values of being Black-led, BIPOC-centered, and farmer-driven. And our local team of farmers created what is now called the Ujamaa Farmer Collective through our advocacy efforts that CAFF was really a big part of us getting successfully some state funding. And just the overall vision is a food system where BIPOC farmers have equitable opportunities to programs and secure land access to build generational security, as well as equitable access to resources, and facilitating a space to commit to cooperative economics so we can share land, we can share costs, we can share tools and infrastructure so that, rising tides lift all boats. Once we're all working together in one space or throughout our regions, we can really support each other and help us get through all the challenges that come with farming. So pleasure to be in community with y'all. And I'll, looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Nelson. I'm already feeling very inspired, so I'm getting excited. And rising tides lift all boats. I love that. So we're gonna remember that one. All right, Patrick, I'm gonna hand it over to you next to share, and then let me get your slides up for you too.
All right. So I'm Patrick Mitchell. I'm the Farm Operations and Cultural Center Manager for the Five Keys Ecological Agriculture Training Center. Basically, our mission is to train farmers, engage farmer families, and create community around small-scale organic and regenerative agriculture. And so we do that through a handful of ways. Our primary program is a 10-month small farm apprenticeship program that we basically, cover everything it takes to start and run a small-scale farm, everything that we can, because as all of you know, farming throws you new challenges every season and every year. So, but we do our best. And one of the things that through that program that we heard from our participants regularly was, what do we do when these high cost things come up? And so what we did was we put together a tool and equipment lending library for anybody who's associated with our program, has access. You don't necessarily have to be in the apprenticeship program, but we, through our cultural and community center, we've built a huge community of folks. And so as long as you're part of that, you have access to it. And we have a tractor that we will do tractor work for you. And then we have a lot of hand tools and things like that that are available. And really what we tried to do was create a situation where those $25 purchases here and there went away. You can come and use our stuff and just kind of create an opportunity where that startup is simplified and becomes low cost. But we've got farmers who've been farming for a decade that have emergencies and need to come in and borrow a seeder or a couple of hula hose or something, and so it's all there, it's available. We've got some other things that we can share, like welders and rototillers and things like that maybe are not something that are needed all the time, but when you need it, you really need it. And so so those are available as well. We actually we're currently have folks involved in our program from 5 counties. So we've got folks from LA, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Orange counties involved. So we kind of, you know, some folks are driving 2 hours to be in our program. And so, you know, when you need something, you've got a place here, and we're just kind of excited to be a part of this. And as we've seen our community grow, these kinds of things have become way more important. And so we're excited to be a part of it and be able to assist. In addition to the training programs, we have about 8 acres currently that we farm on 3 different locations. And so, you know, all of this stuff's going to use. We also have currently have 6 incubator farmers that farm on land that we're responsible for. So, you know, this community and lending and sharing opportunity has become really, really important to our greater community. So with that, I'll kind of step back and look forward to talking to y'all and answering questions as they come up.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. It's great to see your model already working and reaching so far. I had no idea it was going out to San Diego, which is where Kat and I are at. So that's amazing. We'll have to learn more about that. All right. Well, thank you for that. And there's much more there, I'm sure we can get into in the discussion portion, but Kat, I will go ahead and hand it over to you next.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. As I was kind of prepping for this, I realized I was like, oh, a lot of what I do is so connected to the community. When I got started in farming, probably like 12 plus years, I guess 15 years ago with a goat co-op, actually. Now there's another thing. So co-ops got me into this. And I quickly thought, you know, I wanted to have my own farm one day. And as I got into the work, it's like, this is way too hard to do alone. And we're so much stronger together. And I've just kind of put that value at the base of everything I've been doing as I've been growing as a farmer and learning. Today, I'm here to kind of speak to you with my experience working with the cooperative purchasing through Peaceful Valley. And that's really exciting. But wanted to give a little more background about BeeWorthy Farms. We're a 1-acre certified organic cut flower farm. We're located in Encinitas, California, and we sublease from a bigger farm. It's actually a school farm. And that opportunity gives us access to a walk-in cooler, a tractor, BCS, restrooms. And I run the farm with a co-owner. And so we do a lot of work together to build culture and coordinate and, you know, choose who does tasks. So we're working together on that level. And just wanted to touch on some of the other exciting efforts in San Diego, because I know we're inspiring each other today. I'm not directly necessarily involved with all of these, but if you have questions, I just wanted to throw it out there. So if anybody does have a question on these, they can send them my way. So as I said, I'm here to talk about cooperative purchasing with Peaceful Valley. But there's also a seed farmer training happening in San Diego to build the seed stores of San Diego with the goal of building seed resilience in our community and building up the farmers' skills so that they can then teach the class to future people. And we can, you know, build a network that way. It's in like its first year, so we'll see how that goes. There's also a food shed in San Diego, and they are doing some really amazing work. They are building up market streams. So they're creating demand through like the food bank, through EBTCSAs in low-income communities, and through local procurement for schools. And they're also building up the farmer. So they have a carbon incentive program for their farmers and training program and technical assistance for their farmers as well. So that's a really awesome program happening here. And lastly is Gather Flora. I'm a flower farmer, and there's a lot of cooperation that happens with flower farming, surprisingly, and which was surprising to me getting into it, I should say. And so Gather Flora is like an online hub. There's several hubs throughout California that are already around. San Francisco comes to mind and LA comes to mind. And we've been in the early talks of what that looks like here in San Diego to build our own cooperative here locally as well. So those are just some of the little fun, exciting things happening throughout our region.
Awesome. Thank you, Kat. And would you mind expanding on like what the cooperative purchasing looks like for you? Like an example of that, what you're buying, with whom, how it works?
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So we got connected. So San Diego Seed Company is local here, and they were reaching out to us because they've been working with Peaceful Valley for some of their like seed procurement. And so Peaceful Valley is looking to, and they have been hosting these cooperative purchasing events all throughout the state. And so let me actually drop links in the chat here. So you can research it yourself. So I think Peaceful Valley, they just had a new owner buy out the company, and cooperation is a much bigger thing of what he's doing there. So they also have a wholesale pricing. So you can register your farm so that you get a lower pricing on their all their supplies, their seeds, fertilizer, especially row cover. So things that are huge, like we bought a giant sack of worm castings that, you know, you can't really get that shipped easily. But what happens is that like they put out the word, and then we put out the word for, hey, we're having a cooperative purchasing event. It's happening here, and it happened at our farm at BeeWorthy Farms. And a big semi truck came with all of the orders, and then they were here to parse out all those orders, and people came from like all over, even like Orange County and Riverside, to like come and pick up at this like central spot, because delivery is really, really expensive. And so if you're buying your big gallon drums of liquid fertilizer and sacks of fertilizer and long row cover, you can really save a lot of money on delivery, plus the wholesale discount that they're giving you for the stuff itself. And so there's other places that's happening. And so a great way to know what's happening is just sign up as a wholesale farmer. And if you're interested in hosting that site, just consider, you know, a semi truck is going to be coming to your property, and then lots and lots of people. So, but they don't stay long. So thanks for encouraging me to expand on that, Elizabeth.
Oh yeah, no, you have so many examples. So it's very inspiring. So I want to make sure we don't lose any of the, the breakdown of how these examples are supporting the communities. But thank you for elaborating on the other ones, from the aggregation, produce procurement that Food Shed's helping with, to the seed sovereignty movement, to also just like bulk purchasing and saving on shipping orders. There's a lot to dig into there. So thank you for being a part of this and sharing those. And yeah, and I'd love to give the other panelists a moment too, to maybe add in maybe like an example. I'm not, maybe Patrick, if you want to share a little bit more about how a tool lending actually works. Like, is the farmer paying a small use fee, or do they have to make sure it's cleaned properly when they return it? I just love to hear maybe a little bit more details about how your tool lending library works for the farmers who are using it.
We don't charge a fee. One of the things that's unique about our program is we don't charge for anything. We've been lucky enough to receive funding from USDA and CDFA, and actually this particular tool library was funded through the Glide Foundation, which was pretty awesome. So they gave us enough money to purchase a bunch of these tools. We do ask that if a tool is broken when somebody's using it, that they replace it. But that's really the only other piece of it. We ask that they don't keep it for longer than 2 days. And if they do need it longer than 2 days, they let us know. So we can kind of manage where things are and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it's pretty loosely put together. We keep saying, you know, maybe we need to sit down and tighten it up a little bit, but so far it's working. So we're just we're riding it out until there's a real problem, and then we'll address it. But at this point, the biggest one is scheduling tractor time, because we need the tractor, everybody else needs the tractor. So that's kind of requires a little bit more, but otherwise, it's pretty loose and it's working. So we're gonna roll with it as long as we can.
Thanks for going into that a bit more. And that makes sense with the tractor. I'm imagining everyone needs that the same seasons.
Right.
But I love your approach too. Like we'll just figure it out as these things come up. Maybe we are able to get another tractor next season and then that can get expanded. Is that right?
It's one of these things where it's been like, it's really, the community's so involved in it that we're figuring it out as we go together, rather than we've kind of put this thing together and said, okay, now you guys can do it. It's really, it's evolved with everybody's input and needs and things like that. So it's worked out really well so far.
That's awesome. Thank you for going into a bit more on that. And Nelson, I wanted to also ask you just kind of some follow-ups on how your community collaboration project's working in regards to maybe some of the details. Like I believe you guys share on just like labor and like putting that energy into your growing spaces. So maybe like elaborate on that or anything else that you'd like to add to what you guys are doing and how it looks on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, definitely. So I didn't mean to confuse earlier. I was talking about a previous collective I was a part of, and we did have like labor rotations, and this also happened during the pandemic when there's so much uncertainty around like labor and like what that looked like, what you could really do on the land. And so within our small urban farm community in Sacramento, we would just like rotate every week or every other week. Oh, we got a big project. We need to weed this hedgerow. We need to plant something. And it really was helpful because we all have experience, right? So it says like we don't have to hold hands with like volunteers or like get people up to speed and like make sure, oh, don't pull that one, that's not weed or something like that, just getting into the details of that. So that's how that collective kind of organized. And as the pandemic ended, it was like everybody got busy and it was hard to like coordinate those things. But I'm really grateful for what you shared, Pat, because we're actually in the process of building out this cooperative economic like tool sharing on our land as we get more tools, and we have a tractor now, and like really thinking about what that looks like, because it's very valuable to be able to share equipment that would be otherwise expensive, but also like how do you coordinate those things and what does that look like? And I really appreciate that you're involving those that are affected by those decisions in the process of shaping those. So one thing I got to share, and I'm a little embarrassed with Cat, because I'm like, Peaceful Valley, that's in my neighborhood, and y'all doing this collective purchasing. I need to get in. But I do have I definitely got to get on that formal level with the Peaceful Valley and how they organize that. That is awesome. What I've done with other growers that I've not necessarily worked with a collective or more intimately with is we'll do onion orders every year, and we just purchase like a big bulk order of onion sets. And if we did those individually, if we purchased those inputs, those seeds, those plants individually, the cost would have been a lot more per unit, per plant, per seedling. And it ends up being like just like 4 cents per onion. And just to show like the importance of being able to go in and cover that cost together. Like when you brought up about delivery, like if everybody paid for delivery individually, like that would be a lot. But if you're able to coordinate and really put in the effort to have it all go to one space, and you're really sharing that amongst all the people that are involved. So just want to uplift that.
I love this. Thank you, Nelson, because you're also reminding of another, thing that can happen during this panel discussion is you all can learn and inspire from each other, right? So you all three like have something to teach each other. So please don't hold back with asking each other questions during this conversation as well, because I'm sure the attendees will be gleaning from that also and can relate. But yeah, and with that, I there might already be some questions here between all of you, but I know Patrick kind of going to some more, I want to make sure we kind of handle some of the more logistical details to give the attendees a sense of what you guys are actually doing with your community. So there's already been a couple of questions about transporting the tractor. I don't know, Patrick, if you saw those in the chat, I can bring them up for you, but they're really wanting to know how you can transport this tractor and other large equipment between farms. Is there a flatbed or a truck that you haul it? Also, maybe if there's a transport fee for that. I'm not sure if you shared that already, but that'd be great to learn.
So far a trailer is on our wish list. We don't currently have one, so the tractor's kind of currently limited to as far as we can drive it safely, which limits it to a few miles, but that's that still gives us access to 11 or 12 farms that are in our community. So but we are that has been a question that has come up within our folks, and so that is on our wish list. So if anybody's got ideas on how we might fund a flatbed, we'd be real open to that. And I'll also throw in, kind of separate from that, we also have a seed exchange program that we do. We've had a couple of folks in the community who have gone out and written letters to seed companies, things like that. We've gotten lots of donations, and then we just ask that if people take seeds, they bring seeds back, and that kind of stuff. And it's been working fairly well so far. So that's kind of another piece of what we do. But yeah, the trailer for the tractor will be our next challenge to overcome.
Or opportunity, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and Nelson, I love that you shared some numbers there with your 4-cent onions. That's important. Those cost savings are huge. A dollar saved is a dollar earned, as some people say. So, Kat, I wanted to maybe just round out the logistics of all three of what you all are doing a little bit here. If you have any numbers to share, maybe you guys have estimated that you've shared X number on shipping, or the bulk savings that have come for this from the farmers that purchased.
Well, if you host the actual site, then as the site, I think they comp your full delivery cost. And so that's like a huge carrot in order to get that delivery sent to your site. And I think it's like 10% off when you do the wholesale account. And then, I'm just planning a year in advance. So I'm buying a lot of material though. And so something that came up was like storage and like, where am I going to put all these bags of fertilizer now that I've bought them? So.
Yeah, that's great. And then for payment, are you handling it? Are people just like Venmoing each other and one person pays, or everyone has their account on the website and then they pay the company directly?
Yep, they work through the company directly. And so that's, because coordinating efforts and, being that host, be like, oh, who needs to get this and go back out. It's such an effort and an undertaking. So, kudos to Peaceful Valley for taking that on, because that's a resource that's just time, and coordination is such an invaluable resource.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for going into that. So this is wonderful. I feel like we have like a good kind of understanding of what you're all doing and how it looks. But please feel free to like add more details as you're remembering them, or if you want to ask each other questions too on how the operational side of things look or anything, please feel free to chime in. But we have a few kind of prepared questions that we're planning to go over with all three of you. And then I see already some questions in the chat that are related to other prepared questions that we have. So we'll be able to get to those, but folks on the presentation, please feel free to add in your questions into the chat box or the Q&A box. But one of our first questions we wanted to get at is it seems that the farmers, do need to be connected to other farmers in their community to make these collaboration projects happen. And we all know like farmers are so busy just on the field, getting things done. So how did you all connect with other growers in your community, and how do you continue to connect around the work that you're doing? And I'll leave it to any of you to go first.
I can go. So when I was thinking about this question, I'm like, farmers represent, last time I checked, was like 1% of the population, and those that are interested in organic or urban farming or these other kind of like subcultures or subsets of agriculture, like there's not many of us. So when we find out other people that are interested, like we gravitate towards each other, especially to share ideas and resources and where to get things. Like I think it just naturally happens. But I'm trying to think back of like when I was getting started and just having different connections. I feel like it was events that like CAFF put on, like farmer gatherings, conferences like this, like in person and even online, like having the spaces where people of like-mindedness can come together. I think we naturally cross-pollinate ideas. And then from there, share networks. Oh, do you know so-and-so, or do you know? And then just maintaining those communication channels. But mostly for me, sometimes online, I see like what other people are growing or what other farms are in the area, but mostly through like gatherings and networking events like this.
That's great. Thank you.
We were lucky that we were doing the apprenticeship program, so we had folks coming to us, but we also worked very closely with the city of Norco, where we're located, who's done a wonderful job of kind of putting out there that we're here and what we're doing. They really, Norco's kind of a unique town. We're surrounded by these places that want to be cities, and Norco's a city that wants to be a town. And so they're kind of really working at preserving larger lots and making sure that people can continue to keep livestock and things like that. And so they really saw what we were doing as an opportunity to benefit the city's goal of maintaining sort of working lands and rural living. And so they've been really helpful. But Nelson mentioned earlier this idea of, you get together and have a potluck, and that's been huge for us, is those sort of celebrations and community gatherings where there wasn't necessarily any goal to it except sitting down and sharing the food that we're all producing. And that's been huge. We'll have a potluck now. We'll have 75 people come to it, and it's a way for us to continue that network on a level that's a little different than the sort of, hey, I need this or I need that. It's more about what did you run into this week, or what issues are you facing, or hey, I noticed this thing that worked for us, maybe it'll work for you, and that sort of community building around a meal has been huge for us. So.
Power of food. Oh, love it.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that because in Encinitas here, there's like another big farm just across the street, Coastal Roots, and we're so close, but so far away, right? When we're so busy, and that piece of like, hey, let's meet up. And we did tour exchanges and lunch, and then brought our own lunch. So we didn't have to make anything. We just brought our own lunch. And so we hosted them on a tour, and they all brought their lunch, and we all chatted, and vice versa. And like that simple act builds trust and like a personal connection that, just takes that extra layer to be like, okay, I will say yes when I'm making a special request for flowers in the off season, or, and that's, there's a local farmers guild here in San Diego. We've been trying to, get moving along. So plug Thursday up in Julian to come and join Elizabeth and I, and meet us in person. And I know there's a bunch of other local ones happening, so be sure to go to those, because it's, meeting people in person and taking that time to build relationships is really important. And it's been kind of my constant thing, is wondering, how do we share communications? I saw in the chat, someone was like, is there a central like hub for where farmers can like all talk to one another? And I feel like there's been so many efforts to do this. And if anybody has any ideas, please put them in the chat. I'm actively looking for a central spot to put classes. I'm working with some other farmer technical advisors in the area. And we're like, how do we post everyone's classes so we know what's happening and when? And it's, where do we host that? Where are you going to go to find that information? Because farmers are coming in at all these different levels, from like a very new beginning farmer who has different needs to a more advanced farmer that they have their own needs. And kind of when you find your folks that are at that same level, it's harder if you're really advanced and someone's really new, maybe it's more of a mentorship rather than a cooperation, rather than, new farmers all working together and building their cohort and like growing up as farmers together. And so if you're kind of like that grown-up farmer trying to find other grown-up farmers, I think, is there a Tinder for farmers, swipe right,
Yeah, Yeah, instead of age group, it's years in operation, right? That could work.
Yeah. So, app developers out there, but yeah, it's really been like trial and error and seeing what works and doesn't work. Our local RCD started hosting a like newsletter that goes out once a month. And so that's a great way to get the word out about stuff. And the food shed they're building a lot of community with their farmers. So they have a WhatsApp group and it's really active. And so resources and grants go up there, or needs, job postings. And so within that little WhatsApp group, it's very active. And so that's been really effective. And I think that's all the things. It seems like people kind of gather around their sales channels, and which is really interesting to think of, because it's normal. Like the old thought was like, oh, this is my account, and like, hey, elbow out, there's no space. I need all this sales channel. But now I think we're smaller farmers and we can't always provide for the needs of, say, a big school district. And so it's really supportive if, say, I'm growing 200 heads of lettuce and something happens to my lettuce that week, there's another farm that can come in and support and like fill in those gaps, because that pressure to hit those contracts can be a lot. So just really thinking of cooperation and sharing in that way.
Yeah, I really thank you everyone for your responses to that. And then Kat also for just like lifting up the like mentorship versus cooperation, and what really helps drive these cooperative efforts. We've discussed before this panel in preparation, there still needs to be like a purpose. Like we don't just, sometimes we meet to just have a potluck, and that helps build the trust, build the relationships, build the knowledge of each other. But then there's that purpose that's usually needed to take things to the next level and really be the catalyst for this creation of these efforts that you all are taking on. So love to kind of hear, like what was the catalyst for you all? If you don't mind expanding on that. Maybe it was grant funding, maybe it was like the land opportunity. Maybe it was just really needed to save some money on shipping or whatever was going on there. But we'd love to hear from you all. Could be brief too.
Mine's brief with the Peaceful Valley. It was, saving money on shipping and the farm. When and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah. And so it's making it consistent, right? So planning the next one so that farmers can consistently plan on, getting their cover crop seeds and fertilizers. But yeah, money.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So many different catalysts for me. I kind of bring it in to say that the overall is just the need, like the need of like, oh, where do I get my sweet potato slips at? Does anybody in California grow it? Or where can I get my irrigation equipment? Oh, you're paying that much? No, you need to go to this spot, like those type of things. So just expressing that need to folks, especially those that already got experience. And I appreciate you naming that, Kat, of like the different levels of experience have different needs, and being able to have a community that can share those and express those and kind of connect the dots for beginners and just people just getting into it was the main catalyst for me. The need for land access, the lead from every aspect to successfully having an agricultural production, from sales also, like everything that comes with it is and expressing that and having a community to share that with. Or to call upon, I should say. It's not always easy when we're in our silos. Like I appreciate when you said we're so close but so far together, because once we get into the busy season, it's just like head in the soil, and that coordination can be difficult for us to do. But it's good to have platforms and spaces that can facilitate that, so that we can have opportunities to communicate and connect in that way.
For us and myself, it kind of happened really organically. We knew what we needed tool wise and things like that. And as our participants in the apprenticeship program started to increase and start their own farm operations, and it just kind of was this natural thing that said, oh yeah, of course you can use the earthway seeders this week if you need them, or and it just kind of grew out of that. And through talking with folks at CAFF and things like that, it sort of this idea that there was a thing called a tool lending library sort of came up, and it was like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we have and what we're doing. And so we took that and went to different foundations and funding sources and said, hey, this is what we want to do. And so we got a few $1,000s here and a few $1,000s there, and it worked out. But I think it was really recognizing our needs and then hearing that and realizing that everybody else had very similar needs. And so it just kind of happened organically that way.
I appreciate what everyone's saying here and like really clarifying too, is that, understanding your own needs and then like knowing how to ask or get the help that you need to do that. And then that's allowing other farmers to kind of join in who have those similar needs and know where they can fit in too. So there's this understanding that seems to be happening between everyone, which I appreciate you all expanding on. Thank you for this. This is great. Okay, so next question we put together here for you all is what items needed to be in place for you to start your effort? Maybe one of you needed to like talk to a lawyer, figure out liability insurance, or you needed to get your business entity set up so that you could figure out how to better facilitate some of this stuff. Or maybe you received technical support that was very, very helpful to kind of get everything organized. So we'd love to hear from each of you, what were those key items that happened for you that allowed this effort to start and get off the ground?
For us, our program, the Ecological Agriculture Training Cultural Center, is part of a larger educational organization, 5 Keys Schools and Programs. And they've got, they do education programs across the state. We are sort of their only ag-related program, but all of the infrastructure in terms, you mentioned liability and insurance and sort of all of that kind of stuff was already in place. So we were very lucky that sort of part of the machine was already built and functioning, and we could just kind of pull from it. But kind of working through what does that look like? What happens if somebody takes a shovel and it breaks? How do we kind of handle some of that? And again, it's been very sort of informal. We ask that you repair it if it breaks or replace it and that kind of stuff. But beyond that, the bigger items were already in place for us. So
that's great. And there was a attendee question related to this. I'm just going to go ahead and ask now since it ties in there. Any legal liability concerns that your fiscal sponsor, that hosting organization had that you needed to address, or were they just happy to kind of fold everything under their system?
They were pretty happy to, they kind of told us, you can't, myself and a couple of others, when we approached them with this idea, they said, we'll cover you for a little while, you figure out how to pay for it because we can't pay for it forever. And so, 6 months to a year, it kind of took to land enough grant funding and community support to make that happen. But we really, they were pretty happy to help. My previous employment was with them actually teaching sustainable agriculture in the LA County jails. And so when COVID hit and the sheriff's department shut down all of the vocational training programs, we just kind of carried it out to the community, and 5 Keys was happy to kind of continue with us on that. So we were extremely lucky.
That's great. Yeah, the power of a solid partnership there too. That's what I definitely heard with that. Awesome. Nelson or Kat?
Yeah, there's quite to unpack in our story there. Ours is a little unique compared to how things typically go, and I'll just expand on that by saying a group of us had a vision that we're building on for land access, specifically for Black farmers and other farmers of color, to serve the need that we were experiencing. My farm in West Sacramento was facing development and still is facing development, and we've been cultivating there for some time. So that was catalyst for me to advocate more for land access, for what the government calls a historically underserved farmer or socially disadvantaged farmer, as it relates to the Farmer Equity Act. And so in those advocacy efforts, knowing that, for me, my involvement was like, I was experiencing it, but I know many other farmers in urban and rural areas are experiencing land tenure challenges, and to really implement their farm businesses long term, especially regeneratively, right? And so we advocated for some state funding, and we had to have an entity to receive that funding and to hold the land. And the way that it went down for us is we had to be a nonprofit to receive the money from the state. So that comes with its own challenges, holding land as a nonprofit. I mean, we're still figuring out how to do that, but also be cooperative in how it's structured. And I can elaborate on that as well. But yeah, needing lawyers to know all the nitty gritty details so that we can create hedges to protect us from any type of legal challenges that can come our way that we're not aware of, because we're just thinking about land and growing food and all these other invisible structures that exist that we're all, affected by. And we also had to get insurance to close the deal. And then in getting that liability insurance with our tractors, like that added another layer of policy and just like details that I wasn't involved in that process, so I can't speak the details of, but it added a lot more complexity to what we could and could not do. So it's like, oh, you have other farmers and you got to add them to the policy if they're going to ride the tractor that's owned by the nonprofit. So I just spelling out the complexities that come with the way that we went about with the nonprofit. But yeah, definitely lawyers are important. I neglected that at first, but yeah, definitely want to. It's good to have a team that supports you doing it long term.
Absolutely. And we don't want that to be like what scares people away, right? Because there's already a group that's kind of figuring it out. So then that information and knowledge can be shared with others who are looking to do the same thing. So thanks for adding that in. I know it's not always the most fun.
No, definitely not.
Oh, Kat, would you like to share?
Yeah, I want to touch on, I think I talked a little about that capacity for us to be able to coordinate and reach out to one another, because I really think relationships are really, really important in this work. And as we go to build cooperatives, we have to actively choose that. And that means a lot of things for each of us individually, and like time and time scarcity. How do we relate to our own time? And really, what is our personal bandwidth and capacity to like take on another relationship that does require a level of like give and take? So it's sometimes coming at these things in a state of need versus, a state of abundance, and we can offer. And it's just kind of trying to think of where we are at. And we always have different states where we are, in the wintertime. It's like right now you're like, yeah, I want to say yes to this, and say yes to all the things. And then August comes around and yeah, it's hot and tired and the fields are pumping and you got to flip beds over for fall and it's a lot. So, how do we handle tense moments and conflict? It really comes up a lot in my business partnership and on the land as well. The other farmers that are here, it's how do we build the skills to talk to each other with kindness and forgiveness and compassion? And how do we cultivate those skills? And so I would say that needing to have those things in place before we enter into these cooperatives, it's we don't have to be perfect humans. We're all imperfect beings. It's just bringing a little bit more intention and consideration, and like carving out a little bit of a pie to understand we need to be reflective within ourselves when we are in relationship with others.
Yeah, thank you so much for expanding on that, Kat, because it's such a pivotal piece. We have all the legal things and business entities, but then there's a lot of business relationships that don't work out after a certain amount of time. And that's what can we put in place to make sure these relationships are sustainable and they go forward and others can learn from them and grow as well. So just thank you for making that important part. That is so important, one of the most important. So I have one last prepared question, then we're going to jump. I see some questions populating from the audience, so we'll be able to get to those as well. But just one last question to you all, and we can try to maybe keep this response brief if possible. But what are your next steps for your cooperative efforts? What are you working towards? What do you want to see happen for your farmer community around collaboration and cooperative projects? It could just be as simple as what's next, like maybe it's a meeting with someone. I don't know. Our son Nelson and Patrick go off mute.
Go ahead, Pat.
I want to learn more from Kat about that cooperative purchasing. I think that's a piece we've missed, and absolutely would like to kind of take that jump. We've talked a little about it, but it's never come to fruition. So I'm hoping that's a next step, and then the trailer for a tractor, so we can move it further. That'd be the next piece. So that's it for us.
Okay, yeah, no. For me, in our collective, and I do want to shout out Nate Brown from Brown Sugar Farm and Keith Hudson from Grocery Croppers, also a part of our team, really building out our organization. Now that we have successfully acquired the land, right now we are really in fundraising mode, and we are we are implementing our capital campaign so that we can get the equipment and the infrastructure and some of the operational support to keep our lights on, but also to put the necessary pieces in place for our ability to receive farmers. And then with that is the community engagement in the meantime. So if anybody's interested in helping us shape our programs, like I really want to highlight your approach, Pat. We're taking a similar approach. It's like we have ideas on what us three need because we are farmers, right? And we have our different levels of experience, and we can speak to that. But if we're really true about serving the community and the folks that we are reaching now and will expand to reach more, we want to get them in the conversation to really help shape what our tool lending library or what our cooperative economic model will actually look like in the nuts and bolts. We have an idea overarching, so we invite folks in. We had some engagement already, so doing more community engagement with farmers and potential participants in our program. And then right now, just I keep getting on the legal stuff, but we are building in our cooperative structure within our nonprofit. So right now we're working with Farmer Mai and some other folks that are like Minnow and a lot of organizations that are supporting us in building out our governance structure of the organization. And so all those things are going to be happening in parallel as we're building and developing the programs that we'll be implementing in the next few years.
Yeah, thank you, Nelson. That makes sense. It's all important.
Foundation first, yeah. Make sure your foundation to build on first.
Next steps for us is to get another cooperative Peaceful Valley date on the books. And Patrick, happy to send you the information. I saw Alex from Food Shed, I work with Alex, so we'll have to, maybe do a field trip or meet halfway to connect with one another and have a potluck meal together. So yeah, that's on the radar. And I think the next big project for me is working with the Seed Stewards of San Diego and keeping that program going and reaching out to Ujamaa to talk about different models that we can use here in San Diego. Talking about that purpose for a group together. Seeds to be a purpose to bring people together. It's pretty phenomenal, that you have this whole life cycle in growing food, and we take the produce before it goes to seed. And it's such a funny thing. It was, as farmers, we're so connected to the land and natural cycles. So having seed be this purpose driven, something that's connecting cycles. I really love this concept. It's really good and juicy in the brain to be I think that's a really good spot to focus to help bring some connectivity in our region.
Amazing. Thank you. It's so inspired, all three of you. Just thanks for sharing that next steps. And I'm sure everyone, we're all just eager to support each other as much as we can through all this. Before I see a couple audience questions, but I wanted to just take a pause and Jamie, Hannah, or Sarah, or any of the panelists, if there's a burning question that you'd like to ask anyone, to give a moment for that.
No, you guys covered so much. And I definitely see a lot of the questions in the chat. And I guess I'll just use this opportunity to name, like, there's been so much in the chat of like sharing contact information and sharing resources and everybody wanting to call Patrick and Nelson after this, that we put together. I know it's not perfect, it's not solving all of the, yes, there should be a centralized communication platform that we all commit to using, but we are all, as Kat like mentioned earlier, there's been like these fits and starts. Like, we've tried this tool or we've tried this. I have been in the same situation of like, yeah, let's all download this app, and then it never happens. For the interim, we just put together like a contact sheet where people can like put, if they want, they can opt in to putting their name, their email, farm name, location, and then like name what you can offer, name what you need, and name like a resource that you want to share if those are opportunities. So I know that one of us will put that in the chat, but figured I would just prompt it now as we're winding down here.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jamie. We'll definitely take a couple minutes at the end to review that again. Maybe you can screen share and we can take a look at what it's looking like before we close out at 12:45. So we got 12 minutes. It's gonna be good. All right, any other panelists? A question to one another? I want to make sure you guys have, maybe there's something you're like, ah.
Of course, classic media. Like, I had a bunch when we're talking, and now I'm drawing blanks. But I'm definitely gonna be reaching out to y'all to pick y'all brains. And I love everything that was mentioned. Like, it does take a little bit extra effort to work collectively, and there's a lot of structures that are in place that I feel like are disincentives, or like can kind of discourage doing this. Like, if you have an asset, you purchase that, a tractor or something like that, like, you're not going to get the equity if you don't own it in your own business entity. But like, those are things that you may not value. I don't necessarily value that portion, but as a business, like, those are things you got to like think about and consider. Liability, some of the things that were brought up, like, those are real considerations. And Pat, like, getting the tractor to other spaces, like, I didn't even think about that till now, like, not just like in your space, because we're gonna have mostly our main tool sharing and equipment sharing, infrastructure sharing on our land, but there might be opportunities where other people need it outside, and how do we really coordinate that? So yeah, I'm excited to pick y'all brains too.
Great. And Nelson, while we have you on live, there was a question of asking if you've looked into being a community land trust.
Yes, we have actually. We were working with the YOLO Land Trust, and we really explored doing like a 501c2 or some other like land trust entity underneath the nonprofit. It's something we're still exploring. When we acquired our land, our team came to the conclusion that it wasn't the best fit for us right now. But the agrarian trust comes to mind, like creating a model where you could still build equity, financial equity, through collectively owning land, I think, and protecting it from any threats coming in long term is important. So it's still in the back of our minds. We still keeping it in consideration, but it wasn't necessarily what we needed at the time so far. But it is a great idea, and it is a great way to hold land collectively.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I see another question from the audience that's irrelevant with all the winter storms we've been seeing and climate change happening, all the stuff with our infrastructure needs. But this person's talking about how with power outages due to flood or excessive heat, what do farmers do when they have issues with power and can't power their equipment? Do they rent generators? And they were also asking Patrick if maybe that's in your lending library, if you guys have had that need where people are asking for generators, but questions open to all of you with how that looks for your communities.
I would just say we haven't run into that. We've kind of talked about having a generator as part of it, but we haven't run into the power issues specifically. We've been pretty lucky and made it through most of the storms and such recently without much trouble. So, but a generator is one of our additions we'd like to add at some point.
I'll add, San Diego, we just got a lot of rain all at once. Other places in SoCal too, and really excessive flooding happened. We have a community garden and like an incubator farm down in the Tijuana River Valley, and they actually regularly flood being in the river valley. And so I'm thinking maybe that helped prime folks, because the efforts, there's a lot of media frenzy that happens after an emergency, and like buzz. And if you're talking algorithm and sharing on social media and marketing, like optimizing that, like sharing. So the Very Good Food Foundation was able to like put out and match funds for a donation campaign. So that way there's immediate funding available for flood relief for those farmers that they were under a lot of water and a lot of sewage water, and it was really devastating for them. So, that's at least something that can help. But I think if we're talking here is kind of be primed and ready for these emergencies and before fire season starts, is like, is there an entity or an organization in your region that can be that fiscal financial sponsor, so that when these things happen, that we can, you can get those couple photos and a video so that you can quick and share and get those donations from the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Nelson, I see you came off mute.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add because my farm doesn't have power, so I'm just used to not using it. But we're on a small scale, so now that we have this other property and these challenging events are happening more often, especially with the intensity of climate change, as it's looking from my perspective, we're keeping this in mind, thinking about those backup options so that when we're in times of disaster or crisis, that we can be as prepared as we possibly can. But yeah, thinking about, just not necessarily on the power, but talking about the flooding. So last year when the big floods happened in Northern California, our farm did okay with all of our practices that we do with the soil. But we had the whole city, in an urban farm, the whole neighborhood was like flooded for like, a few feet. So in that moment, just the community came together and we all like unplugged everything. And it was a beautiful thing to see, like in those moments, people share ideas, share resources, and really come together to solve that problem. So really banking on and really highlighting the fact that, when these things happen, we can lean on each other as a community, whether you're in a space or if you're spread out, we can really help each other out.
Yes, thank you for that. I see another question in the Q&A box we might be able to answer offline or get to at another point, but I wanted to make sure, Jamie, we have some minutes for a call to action that Jamie would like to share with us, and then we can maybe look at our contact sheet and how that's looking.
Yeah, I put it in the chat earlier, but I'll send it again of like, when foundations don't come through, we need state dollars for these things. And the reality is that there's nothing that exists in like a full form to actually support more technical assistance, to like think through forming a co-op, actually purchasing the equipment like a tractor or a trailer or all of the very, very expensive equipment that sometimes, you can't front 20 grand for a seed drill. That money should, in some people's opinion, come from the government to like subsidize those extreme costs for small scale and underserved farmers, especially when it comes to yeah, thinking more cooperatively, thinking about conservation practices, thinking about trying out new practices. There should be opportunities to test out new pieces of equipment. That program is in the form of a bill right now that is going through the state legislature. The more farmers and community members that we get to sign on to that, the more compelling it is to the powers that be, that this is what the community wants and this is what the community needs in terms of financial support. So I can drop in a link to just a sign on. It's a sign on letter. And you can sign your organization if you have the permission to, or your farm, or yourself onto that letter, and address that. And I'm just going to name the comment that's in the chat right now of like, how about the California Center for Cooperative Development? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Of like, there are 2 to 3 people at that center that can provide that kind of a technical assistance, and that's about it. There's a few other folks in this state, but the fact that we only have a handful that can provide that kind of technical assistance when we have tens of thousands of small scale farmers is not enough. And so we really need to be funding that. So I'll put that letter in the chat. But yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
Great. And I think I only need a minute to kind of share this contact sheet and just want to show folks how it's already shaping up. We got a farm contact sheet and resources that have been shared that we're organizing. All of this is going to be emailed out to everyone who was registered for this session. The recording will be shared as well as links to all these various resources that we're talking about. Please feel free to forward that along to a friend or any contacts that you think would find it helpful too. We want to make sure people feel supported with all this. So I think for the last 2 minutes, Nelson, there's one last question, and then I'm planning to screen share this contact sheet, and then we'll wrap it up. That sounds good for folks. So Nelson, there was a question over, or maybe it's to other folks, but what organizations can we contact to help with fiscal sponsorship in West Sacramento?
First, I gotta say, hey, West Sacramento, okay. I don't know if the question is specific to organizations within West Sacramento or just in general to support. I don't, we had to get fiscal sponsorship for the Ujama Farmer Collective, and there was a lot of nonprofits in Sacramento that we reached out to, and I don't have any to share because they didn't work out for us. And what advice I would give is you want to really look at their administrative capacity and making sure that you feel comfortable with them administering grants and funding for you as a project of theirs. And there are legal distinctions that come with you being a project of another organization. So I just want to name that. I would love to connect. I can share more details on supporting with that. But to answer the question on what our fiscal sponsor is, Possibility Labs. They're based out of the Bay Area, and they've been really supportive and really good for us. They might be, I don't know what level of support that you need, but definitely I'm gonna put my information in the chat here so you can connect with me about getting the details about that, because yeah, definitely important details. I learned the hard way.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Nelson, for being willing to share that. So this link that you see here, the docs, Google link, is this Google sheet that CAFF, we wanted to offer something to the community around being able to continue this conversation. We're not necessarily going to be like managing this list. It's really a platform for you all to connect with each other. So you can see here that there's a column for what you can offer and also a column for I need. So we just encourage everyone who's interested in this to take a look at that Google sheet to see if there's anything that you can maybe plug into or vice versa for supporting folks with. We have, location, and then we also have the resources tab that have been shared. So there's some already population of various resources that have been linked there. So yeah, I know we're at time, so we'll close out the session now. I think we might have some closing video to share with folks, but really appreciate everyone being on today's webinar. And thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation. Thank you to our panelists. Amazing work you're all doing for your communities. Thank you, Jamie, for helping to lead these policy efforts that are an important component to the funding and the staff capacity to support these efforts. So just thank you everyone for being a part of this.